What up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Nino Radio episode 3, I believe, or is it 4? I might be wrong, but we're going to probably even change the name of it. I got Shane Manziel right here, a good friend of mine. Shane, we're going to be doing a podcast, God willing, weekly, me and you.
Yes, sir.
We're going to bring up right now what we stand for, what we hope to accomplish with the podcast. Shane, can you give a quick introduction as to who you are?
Shane Mansell. I'm 51, if it matters. Doesn't but just generally, I think I'm pretty much, if you take the conservative, or I won't even say conservative. There's so many people that call themselves conservatives nowadays, but I'll just say that for the group of people in this country that love their country and love their countrymen and want what's best for this country, I feel like I am the epitome of the average guy in that group.
Where you from, Shane?
Midland, Texas. I was born in Midland Memorial Hospital.
What side of town?
I grew up a little bit over on New Jersey and Baird, right there by the swimming pool. Lived a little bit over a good while, actually, on the west side. I went to Travis, Jane Long, Santa Rita the first year I opened it. Went to Alamo, went to Midland Freshman, and then I went about 30 days to Midland High.
Hey, Shane, you said the swimming pool. That New Jersey, that's my hood. Southside Midland. Where was the swimming pool?
Yeah, it's not too far from your house. You just go, if we go right down here to New Jersey and shoot over just to the east across 349.
But you're saying the swimming pool, though. That's what I'm saying.
The park.
Yeah, but was there a swimming pool there?
Man, I
remember they said there was. Somebody drowned.
I want to say like I was 6 or 7, and my oldest sister, Cindy, actually lived right across the street. Like literally, you'd call it a shack nowadays, and her husband, Bernie, lived there, and we were just always there. And there's a fire department. There's a firehouse right next to it. If I remember, man, I'm positive there was a swimming pool there.
No, I heard there was at the Boys and Girls Club, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard there was too, but they closed it down. Somebody drowned or something like that.
Something.
But yeah, it's crazy that you remember that, bro. Yeah, you really from the South Side then.
Yeah.
Or you're from I would say, I don't even know if it's the Southeast, but I claim I'm from the Southwest. I don't know if people are not really divided. What is it?
I think back when I was a kid, like the East Side, they considered up more towards like Pecan and Oak and all of that off of La Mesa and Carver and all of that, because that would have been like, I don't know the Earthies or whatever, but pretty much over here, especially south of Florida, South Side, I mean.
What do you mean the Earthies?
Just some guys running around,
There was a gang or what?
I wouldn't necessarily call it that.
A club or something?
Yeah, just.
Wow, interesting. Shane, so you were born here in Midland, right?
Yes, sir.
So you seen it turn into what it is now. I'm going to just say that I don't like how it is. I make my money off the oil. I believe that there's a lot of control in these cities by certain companies. I'll leave it at that. And my wife and kids, if they go get Chick-fil-A, I'm afraid for them to, lose their life, maybe in traffic. I heard there's over 40,000 illegals in Midland. It's a dangerous place, I think, in Midland and Odessa. Your thoughts on what Midland was and what it has become?
I would agree nowadays, especially with the traffic and just the amount of people running the streets. I mean, when I was a teenager, of course, teenagers run the streets, they do what they do, skateboarding, riding bikes, whatnot. But we didn't have people standing at every intersection with the sign, soliciting money, look like they've been on a, 3 or 4 day run of some dope or, this. And then you see, like the other day, guy jumps in the back of somebody's pickup. And, I showed it to my wife. She's like, what do you do if some dude does like that? And I said, well, it's kind of crazy because your first impulse is to get out of the truck, say, get the hell out of my truck. I said, you don't know if the guy don't have a gun or a machete or what, so probably you end up doing what that guy did, trying to sling him out of the truck.
Thank God that he did pretty good and got him out of there, I say. So when you grew up, Shane, we're gonna get into what we're gonna do here on the podcast, but I kind of want to get a backstory on you. When you grew up in Midland, how was Midland back in the day?
It's pretty conservative growing up. It was known as, I believe for a long time, it had the highest per capita income in the nation. Always conservative values as far as, vast majority of people, I would say, were Christians by religion. It's always a large Hispanic and white mixture of people with a fairly decent size of Black Americans. Mostly lived on the South Side too, but sprinkled a little bit throughout the city. I will say, and it's just maybe in my opinion, I don't know that everybody will agree with me, but I personally believe that my generation was the first generation that grew up fully, integrated in schools and sports and all of that. And, I would say by the time I was 13 or 14 years old, I mean, you didn't think about that. You just, who you went to school with, who you played ball with, who you hung out with was, whoever was there.
Before them years, did you think about it?
No, not really. I mean, just in hindsight, a little bit like you would know for the most part, wasn't a whole bunch of whites over on the South Side, in the 70s, very early 80s. But for the most part, I mean, it was a good place to be. If you got into a scrap or something with somebody at the pool or the park or the boys club or whatever, it was almost always going to be one-on-one. But, if you got somebody's little brother or cousin down on the ground, they weren't going to let you stomp them or, nothing like that, which that's a good thing. You don't, there's one of the things I do remember, which is one of my, as we're talking a little bit before we got on air, a subject that's dear to my heart is abortion. I don't remember them having any kind of abortion like clinic or anything in Midland. I do know that I would say I was probably around 8 years old, maybe a little bit younger. They had something like that in Odessa. So I remember my mom took us with her over there, and they were just protesting, holding signs. And that's may or may not be part of the reason why that issue is so important to me. As far as that foundationally, when I say I'm the common guy, as far as somebody that loves this country and loves his fellow countrymen and wants the best for it, part of the reason that sticks out to me with abortion, and just an offhand comment, we could get deeper if you want, but people always say, oh, we've been trying to cure cancer for 50 years, or we've been trying to do this, and we've been trying to do that. And I always think, man, what if the guy that was going to cure cancer or the girl that was going to cure Parkinson's, what if they got aborted? I mean, you just don't know. I know there's an upper class or elite class of citizens or whatever they want to call themselves. They like to believe that abortions are mostly performed, for low income, uneducated people, and which I think is partly by design. So they think there's probably small chance of that. But
man, that hit right there when you said that, and I've heard that before, Shane. That what if the person that was going to cure cancer, whatever, what if they were aborted? But man, especially in 2024, imagine all the lives lost, bro. Like that probably was possibility. But then again, what if the cure to cancer is already out there, right?
Oh yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. That did really hit me. We'll touch on abortion in a minute, but back to your upbringing before we get into why we're doing this podcast. This is my good friend right here, y'all, Shane Manziel. And I say I respect you, common man. I believe I'm the same way. Well, how was the relationship between Midland and Odessa back then up till now? Because now they're like interconnected, bro.
Yeah.
It's 10-minute drive and there's stores in between.
Well, I'll just tell you this. I had it was in 2005, and I was riding a bus, and the bus was stopping in Odessa. I was going to get off the bus in Odessa. My uncle was going to come pick me up.
Yeah.
And it just so happened I happened to be wearing a pair of black pants and a white sweatshirt. It wasn't a hoodie, it was just a sweatshirt. But anyway, I remember thinking when I got there, when we were pulling into Odessa on the bus, man, thank God I'm not wearing purple or maroon. And, it's just when I grew up, I mean, these cities kind of hated each other.
And it's funny you say that because I feel when I was younger, it was kind of, we still had that same kind of rivalry. So that was there, I'm pretty sure more harder than it is now, but that was there back then. Why do you think it was like that?
Maybe a little bit. You know, Midland was considered, you know, like they say, you raise your children in Midland, raise hell in Odessa. And it was considered more, I guess, a upper class or nicer city or something like that.
We were Midland, right?
Yeah, Midland. And you know, but that's like any city in America. Yeah, you might have had a lot of money over here on Wall Street and Texas Street with these oil companies. Their offices were over here, but you know, you have that middle class and lower middle class. You got it everywhere. I mean, it's the way it's structured. There's almost no way to avoid that. But as far as the connection between the two cities. Back then, especially if for no other reason than pride, you know, pride's something else. But then people we all love football, and especially high school football. And you had them Permian Panthers, you had the Midland Lee Rebels. And, you know, I was first Bulldog in my family, but, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to be careful with my language. But you could wind up with the foot in the wrong place, wearing the wrong thing on the wrong night in the wrong city. You know,
Are you
over football. Yeah,
damn.
Dude, I'll tell you, I do remember one year when I was a kid. We went to San Angelo for it was either a playoff game or it was a deciding game to see who was going to get in the playoffs between San Angelo Central and Midland Lee.
And San Angelo is
in San Angelo.
But in San Angelo, where is that in accordance to Midland?
Hour and 45 minutes from Midland, a little bit to the southeast.
Okay.
So it was somewhat of a rival, a little bit, you know, an area rival because they were pretty decent, scrappy team, and you know. But we went down there for a playoff game, and thankfully it wasn't our vehicle. But when we came out of that game, there was a lot of vehicles that had Lee written in shoe polish and stuff like that. They had their windows busted out, headlights busted out. And I honestly, I can't remember who won the game, but I think that Lee won the game, and that was contributed a little bit to the mayhem after the game.
Whoa. So it was pretty rough back then, huh?
Yeah, I mean, people get excited about that stuff.
Okay. So, Shane, what made you even, you know, take my offer up to come down here and even get involved in doing this, because you no longer live in Midland, right?
Yeah, I moved. I'm actually in Martin County now. I'm probably 12 minutes from the county line, but I'm about 35 minutes from getting into town when we come to Midland. I moved out right after all the COVID stuff, you know. There's a little bit of stuff going on with, you know, the name change of Midland Lee, and, you know, I filed a lawsuit about that, and there were some teachers. My son was in 7th grade that year, and he got a little bit of flack and some attitude and stuff over that, and the COVID, not, you know, putting a mask up over his nose and all of this stuff. And we'd been thinking about getting a little bit bigger place for a couple of years, and you know, when that stuff went the way that it went, I just say, you know, you can't. It's repulsive to me to think of living under any kind of administration where your opinion and your input is not even worthy of consideration or not even relevant. And Midland seemed. I felt like at that time what I was seeing between with the local leadership, you know, city council, school board, just pretty much the whole ball of wax, county commissioners, that it was like, you know, they have an agenda and they're marching forward with their agenda. And I'm not a guy that could just sit by. So I had to remove myself from it. I just had to.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's not like Shane didn't try. We were up there. I mean, my blood's kind of sizzling up, not boiling yet, but thinking about these situations we went through dealing with the school board. I never really got involved like that before. Black Lives Matter came to Midland. The political scene was hot and heavy. The mask mandates, which I believe were unconstitutional. I mean, how you can try to tell us to wear a mask if it doesn't work. I'm not going to say here on YouTube the science behind it, but can you touch on that little period, Shane, because you were very active in that time, and I don't know how much you want to delve into it, but just touch on that for people that might not even know what we're going through as Midlanders, bro.
So the two things that stand out to me was, one, that it you know, if you want to use the term psyops, So
What does that mean?
where two things happen at the same time, two operations happen at the same time. And from the moment of the COVID flare up or whatever you want to call it, the kids had come out of school for spring break. We had a nephew and a niece from New Mexico that were down there hanging with the kids or whatever. And during the course of that week, we noticed that it was getting very hard to find toilet paper, to find cases of bottled water, even eggs in some cases, because people had started panicking, going buying all that they could find wherever they could find them. And we also, once they announced that the kids were not going back to school, as spring break was in, and they said, no, we're postponing school. Nobody's returning to school this week, whatnot, and which ultimately led to them finishing school this school year at the house. Well, at the same time, the George Floyd situation had happened in Minnesota, and this may be, in hindsight, regardless of the circumstances of how George Floyd died and what he did, what the officers did and didn't do, and all of that, it may go down as one of the biggest squandered opportunities in American culture. And I say that because just the optics of what happened with George Floyd were so horrible, and they provoked so much emotion, not just outrage, but to see, the officer's knee in the man's neck while he's handcuffed on the ground.
Even though,
right.
there's other...
Let's
Okay, go ahead.
Let's do this in a vacuum, regardless of the circumstances, okay?
Okay.
Regardless of the circumstances, it's like we talked about a while ago, when you're a kid and you're having a scraps, you get the guy on the ground, you don't just stomp him. That's how it was back then. But, to see a guy on the ground, not knowing what happened before, not knowing what's going to happen afterward, but you see a guy, he's restrained, he's on the ground, and see another grown man with his knee in his neck. Those optics were so horrible, and actually I think that's bad training. I would rather him be trained to somehow lock another chain from his handcuffs to a tire, to a rim on a police vehicle, than to see my son with somebody's knee in their neck while they're restrained.
Fair enough, and I have to remove myself because I have my certain opinion about the situation, which, as you do, but you're making the point that the optics of it was so crazy and it was used in a certain way that we squandered an opportunity to do what? That was pretty interesting.
So
go ahead.
That was probably the first time in my life, and I remember, the stuff after Rodney King and a couple other incidents during my lifetime. This was the first time that I saw everybody say, that can't happen. We've got to stop that. When a guy's restrained and subdued and you've got him, we have to stop all the stuff that comes after that, all the, the excessive force or whatever, and I know opinions are going to be different, but by and large, there was almost a unanimous cry for police reform, at least in the aspects of what happens after somebody is restrained or subdued.
Okay.
And that needs to happen. I mean, we dependent on the police department and probably the individual officers on any given day, whatever's transpired earlier in the day for him or whatnot, some of these training tactics, I feel, lend themselves to abuse in the right circumstances.
But you do back the blue.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, I would say, as far as that goes, we're talking in a vacuum a while ago. We know there were circumstances that led up to what happened with George Floyd. We know that he had a history before. I think, if I remember correctly, Chauvin, or whatever his name is, Chauvin, he had a little bit of history with some kind of questionable behavior before or whatever. But when you're a menace, you're being a menace to the public. And this brings up another good point. Let's go back to the squandered opportunity.
That's what I want.
Okay, so there was a unanimous outcry for reform. So we have all these leaders, and the one that disappointed me the most, I have to say, is LeBron, because LeBron's platform is massive. At that moment in time, nobody had more social clout maybe as an individual, in my opinion, than LeBron.
Good point, and probably even to this day.
Yeah, maybe even now. But you know, he took the view that he took, and he took the stance that he took. But people talk all the time. You know, you'll see on social media or whatever about, I guess, maybe black parents having the talk with their kids. Well, what obviously or maybe is not known is that any parent that cares about their kids has the talk about what you do if the police pull you over or the police stop you, frisk you, whatever. That's not the time to plead your case.
Right.
That's not the time to start a fight. You answer their questions respectfully, or just let them know, hey, I'm not going to answer any questions.
Got a lawyer.
You go through the process. It's somewhat reasonable when you don't, for the police to think, if they didn't already think, they're liable to think, you know, something's going on here. I need to look at this deeper, or I need to, hey, this guy, I need to, you know, it makes them suspicious, probably makes them more aggressive. And when somebody gets suspicious and they get more aggressive, they're liable to make bad decisions. So you're creating a recipe for disaster in somebody that the only talk they've ever had is, you know, screw the police. You know, if that's the talk they had, or, hey, you better watch out, the police going to kill you. That's not a very good talk.
Okay, so back to what you're saying about LeBron and squandering.
LeBron should have took that opportunity to say.
And did what?
When these situations, everybody's talking about they want justice. I don't know if everybody understands what justice is. If the man was killed unjustly, there is an investigation. This officer has been arrested. They're investigating other officers. We are in this is the process of justice.
That's what I was saying the whole time, bro.
Just like George Floyd had rights, this officer has rights. Our society, I won't say society has rights, because I believe all rights devolve onto the individual.
Okay.
But once you're in this process, you cannot argue for or against justice or call it injustice until you get to the end of the process. And all the circumstances have come out, all the evidence has come out, which, you know, we know now, you know, a lot of things as far as what happened before, the way it went down. If you just wanted my opinion on it, I think there are things that he should have done differently. He probably mostly acted in the way that he was trained, which is a shame, because regardless of anyone's opinion of George Floyd, you know, I'm not somebody that doesn't have sympathy for a mother or a father or a child that loses their dad, their son. But that's why when you have the talk, emphasis the talk, you want to give them the best information you can where they're able to act and conduct themselves in a way that is not likely to lead to an altercation, a fight, or anything else with the police. Because when it starts in the moment, you can just look at it like this. If somebody kicked in your front door, you're not going to be interested in discussing why they kicked it in. They're going to put an end to the situation whatever way they can. And, you know, one of the saddest things, in my opinion, about those instances, any of those instances, is that young men are making decisions that clearly indicate they not only undervalue the lives of the people around them, they don't even value their life. For the sake of their pride or their reputation, they're willing to act a fool like that, and then something like that happens when the end result is man, it's sad. Even like I said, I know the guys had a history, had issues or whatever, but it's sad to see somebody lose their life like that.
Okay, Shane, so full circle back to Midland. We're heavily involved
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
And yeah, it was that moment in time, you know, there was gonna be a so-called BLM march or rally or whatever you want to call it here. And that's actually where I first met you. And I saw and I said, wait a minute, you know, we're in the process of justice, and these people are saying they need to have a march to demand justice. And then I see you, you know, and I'm like, well, I'm a little bit shocked because I didn't think anybody, given the circumstances and the optics of the George Floyd situation, I didn't think anybody would have the fortitude or the courage to go up and say, hey, listen, there is no problem like this in my city. And you don't need to come here and act like there is or create a situation where there can become one. And I think more than anything, the fact that you cared enough, because I think there's plenty of people that cared, but there were not very many that had the courage or the passion to come be outspoken and say, hey, we don't need that. You know, if there's a situation like this in our city, we're going to handle it. And I believe that for the most part. You know, sometimes maybe a drunk guy jump on the police, he gets a little bit more of a butt whooping than he probably deserved. That happens, I'm sure. But by and large, because we've had a strong community support for law enforcement and the enforcement of the law, it might be a little redundant, but people don't act like that here. When the police pull them over, they give them their license, they give them their insurance, and if they have to end up going to court or get arrested, for the most part, they do.
Shane, so that happens, right? BLM comes, you're involved, you know, heavily with these mandates. Touch on the Lee High School name change.
So, you know, when...
Give a quick, like, a breakdown.
The first thing that struck me was, the first thing I thought when I saw that was, I'm not surprised. I'm a little bit surprised that they're doing this during COVID, but I'm not surprised that they're going to go ahead and vote to change the name of this school, because you could see what things going on.
And it was already happening in other places.
Right, in other places and this and that. And my first feeling about it was actually curiosity. And it was like, well, I wonder who signed this petition, because they were saying that they brought it up in the school board because there was a petition for it. And I was like, well, I wonder who all was on that petition, you know? Because honestly, Nino, if a couple of a handful of my friends that I grew up with had been on that petition, some men and women that are black women and Hispanic women, if they had felt strongly about it, man, I can have that conversation. And I could see myself signing that petition if the student body, if the current student body and the other people that I know are in this community that have contributed to this community felt like, hey, we need to change this. I can have that conversation, and I'm not sure I could be convinced one way or the other. But I was curious about whose petition it was, who had signed it, what they had to say about it.
Interesting. Okay.
So first thing I did is look up the petition. Was the change.org petition. And I thought, I've never heard of change.org. Well, I started looking through the petition itself and the signatories. And one thing that stuck out to me is I kept reading the signatories: California, Canada, New Zealand.
I didn't know that. So,
oh yeah.
So you're trying to get to the fat here, or to cut to the fat here. You're saying these signatures were primarily not from Midland?
I would say if I had to put a number on it, Nino, if I remember correctly, it was something like, out of all the signatures, I forget what the total number was, but about 20 to 25, maybe 30% of the signatures on the petition were from Midland, Odessa, this area. And all told together, maybe 45, 55% were from like Texas. But there were full 50% that were from other states or other countries.
Bro.
They weren't even from here.
Bro, how the hell do they have the justification to push their narrative or any kind of change in my city, and they don't even live here, bro?
Well, here's another interesting thing. Well, to me it is. So before I actually even talked to any of the people that wanted to do the counter petition to stop the name change, I actually called a good friend of mine, brother of mine. I love the dude. I've always loved him. Loved him since we were teenagers. Happened to be the second black quarterback at Lee High School. Broke every rushing and passing record that they had. Great guy, great athlete, good student. I could never bring myself to say anything bad about him. I respect him a ton. But I happened to call him and ask him, hey, what do you think about this? And, he tells me, he says, well, we've been kind of talking about it, and we're like, it don't really matter to us as long as they leave that Rebels on the jersey. We played for each other and the team, and he said, but I don't know why they did, started all this, man. They're making a big old mess out of something that don't even matter. I thought, okay. And so after he told me that, then I talked to a couple of the ladies that were talking about doing a petition. And I said, well, y'all, if y'all will accept my help, I'll help you get this petition organized. And man, I know I'm going to botch some of these names, but Daisy Narvaez, Carrie McNeil, there was Rhonda, there was another Carrie, and I can't remember her last name. I want to say it was chiefly 6 or 7 mothers of current students at Lee, I think, at the time. And then, some alumni that had grandkids going there or whatever. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that the petition was done correctly, because in the state of Texas, for a petition to be valid, for you to sign that petition, you have to be a resident in that voting district. The petition not only has to be signed, but the petition gatherer has to see an ID. You have to list your address.
There's certain requirements.
Right. Because the petition gatherer has to sign an affidavit saying these are true and valid signatures.
And I remember that. I remember y'all are very thorough about that.
And so I wanted to make sure that they knew that, hey, you just can't take a piece of paper up there and write at the top or whatever. And which these ladies, if they, I don't remember if they knew that or not, but if they didn't, they would have figured it out real quick. I mean, these ladies were all sharp.
Yeah,
they were all they cared about what they were doing. They were committed.
And they still are, all them.
Yeah. And my whole take on the thing was that I couldn't believe that a petition with the bulk of the signatures not being registered voters or even residents of Midland was what was used in that school board meeting to make this decision. Because they talked about it before, right? And, there's some people for it, some people against it, whatever. But it needed to be a decision the community made, right? Because what better to divide a community than things like this? I will say one of the most influential people on me that I may have not participated as much as I did in that petition drive if I'd talked to him before. He's a pastor who went to Carver High School the last year that Carver was open and had to go to Lee the first year that Lee was open. So he went from an all-black school to an integrated school his senior year. And, so he lived through it. He lived through when Carver was shut down and Lee was opened up and, the integration and all of that stuff. And to his credit, I did not feel like he was bitter or hateful or anything like that. He's actually, I don't know if I said that, he's actually a pastor at a church. And, but he hoped that with the name change, they would find a way to honor those guys from Carver that had to go do that. I mean, the people, those black students that went from Carver into Lee that first year, they were guys that had a storied football program at Carver. I mean, they were monsters.
Carver was a high school?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a black school.
In Midland?
In Midland.
What did it turn to later?
It turned into, when I was a kid, it was Carver Center. We used to go over there for field trips. And
so it was a high school. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he told me that more or less there was such animus at the time that even though they closed that as a high school, none of the coaches, none of the players were allowed to keep any of the trophies from the trophy case. None of them were allowed to keep their jerseys. They wore that last year or anything because other people were upset that they were going to integrate the schools and, things
so they
like
closed
that.
them to integrate.
Right.
Okay, so what role did he have in the name change of Lehigh? I remember that you wanted to change it to Carver, or you wanted to honor them. Was that the case? I forgot.
So what I put on there, what I suggested, and I think that they agreed with, was that we put on there that the name not be changed, or if it was changed, to be changed to Carver Lee.
I remember that.
Okay.
Shane, yeah.
And my opinion, I thought that was a way that that history could be brought out. You can talk about these things and you can have a conversation. I never looked at it like this. I never understood that, or I never knew that part, the history of Carver.
Me neither.
And, unfortunately, it's one of those things that when people start acting off of emotion and this and that, and we can say whatever, one of the arguments was, well, if we change the school name, we're going to have to rebrand the school. The gym floor says Robert E. Lee, the baseball field, the this, that. We're going to have to change all that. That's going to cost millions of dollars. Well, I got a news flash for everybody. The school district is going to waste your money no matter whether you change the school's name or not. So that was kind of the one argument to me. It didn't make a lot of sense. At first I thought, oh, yeah, that's a good point. But then I thought, well, I mean, if they keep that name the same, they're going to come in here in 4 or 5 years and they're going to redo the gym floor and they're going to redo the outfield wall, the baseball field. So, but, as far as the activity going on, it's just that, so those were two issues, the BLM issue coming up to the forefront of culture at the time, the COVID issue going on, people not wanting to be mandated, not to have mandates in place for vaccines and masks. And then we had the sub-issue at that point of the name change of Robert E. Lee High School, which led to another sub-issue of the school board. Nobody's ever looked. Midland County, hey, this is Midland, hadn't elected a Democrat in my lifetime, but they were doing a lot of things in ways that you would not expect people that respect individual liberty and freedom to do them. Even with the name change, like I said, if you say, okay, we're going to have an open school board meeting, we're going to talk about this, we're going to listen, and whether we're going to vote or not, but we're going to consider this, and we want the community to come give their input. That in my mind, that's how you do something like that, right? You don't just. It's like anything else in life.
But how did they end up doing it?
They pretty much did it in a closed school board meeting during COVID. Brought that petition, the change.org, looked at it. The council or secretary or whatever he was of the school board brought it up, mentioned it. There's 10,000 signatures or whatever. Okay, I motioned to vote on this, vote on that. But they voted for it, done deal.
And it was all downhill from right. Once they voted to touch on it, right, the way it worked, they ended up having to vote on it, right?
I think it may have been one more meeting.
Well,
they voted.
Let me just ask you this, Shane. So the whole thing with the Lehigh name change, in your opinion, should it even been brought up to the school board to even vote on talking about? Because if it has these fraudulent signatures, right, you have to have certain things in place. Shouldn't that have been something thrown out?
I would say no, and that was the main reason I filed the lawsuit. Because whether we want to change it or not, my opinion was that if there's a petition that's going to be used in the MISD school board meeting, it needs to be a petition signed by people that live in MISD.
I agree.
And then we can have that conversation, I outside of that, that to me was the biggest issue of the whole concern.
So it wasn't legal, you think?
I'm not a lawyer. We can say legal, illegal, right or wrong. I do know this in the state of Texas, a valid petition in Texas for use in government proceedings has to have signatories that are verified to live in the jurisdiction that they're petitioning.
Did they follow that guideline?
That did not apply to that case.
So they come back with the verdict, and they change the name of Lehigh to Legacy, whatever, Elite. How did you feel when you saw that happen? What was your feelings on that? Did you expect that to happen too?
There was a little part of me that I'm a Bulldog. I know my family they all went to Lee, but I'm a Bulldog, so there's a part of me like I never liked Lee, so.
Hey, fair enough.
Right. But at the same time, there was also another part of me that was like, well, that's what people get. None of y'all are paying attention. Nobody goes to school board meetings. Nobody has any idea what the school board's doing. Nobody has any idea what the local government is doing. So when you choose not to engage and you choose to be ignorant, this is the type of stuff you get.
Okay, now let's segue to another reason why we're doing these pods. There's a lot of corruption in Midland. Do you agree?
I would say there has to be. If I was a blind and deaf man, but I could read Braille, and you asked me that question in a Braille platform, I would say there has to be.
Why?
The whole way that our civil society is structured, this administrative state, I know a lot of people think maybe that only exists in Washington, D.C., but when you don't hold, it's just like with criminals, street criminals, when you don't hold people accountable, it's going to proliferate. It's going to get worse and worse. I would say it's not the exception. It's the rule. It's the way things are done.
That's a damn good point.
People in positions of influence or power or authority, unchecked, tend to offer, contracts or include people that they know and network with. There's inside, there's inside roads, there's inside avenues, whatever you want to call them. Let's take, for instance, and I understand there's administrative and state law issues with this stuff going on with Ranchland Hills Golf Course.
I was going to touch on that. And besides that, also what I was against was these school bond issues that they claimed didn't raise nobody's taxes, but someone's going to pay for it, and we had to pay. We're footing the bill for these new high schools. So, but go ahead, ahead, train of thought.
So, real quickly on the Ranchland Hills issue. So MISD owns Ranchland Hills. They're going to tear it down. They're going to build a high school over there.
MISD owns it, right? Okay.
Yeah, they bought it a couple years ago. Sweetheart deal for the owner, by the way. But anyway, they're going to tear it down, build a high school. Well, of course, other members of the community are saying, well, we're going to be without a golf course that we need. And okay, so you're losing a golf course in Midland County. Golf courses are always busy or whatever. So they're upset because Midland County or MISD will not trade properties with the county so that the county can just keep the golf course instead of having to build another golf course. And I totally get that. Yeah. If the government's going to be involved, makes total sense to me for the school district to sell Ranchland to the county and the county to operate it as a golf course. That makes a lot more sense than tearing it down, building a high school, and then the county buying land, building a golf course with all that costs. But while that makes total sense to me, nobody asked the question. I've asked the question, why is the county getting involved in building golf courses? Yeah, just, we got to have our public parks and this, that, the guy at Ranchland did pretty well for a long time, so I don't know why there's surely there's enough money and interest, or If there's not, maybe there doesn't need to be another golf course, but it's my contention that the county has no business building another golf course. They already have one in Hogan. So why would we, other than being nice to people, a very small select group of people, build another golf course? Why would we use that money to do that? Bigger point that you said, get into all of it, MISD, the money. Well, don't even take MISD. Just take the whole city, the whole county. Tax money, what they're spending it on, what they're not spending it on. And this probably applies to every county in every state of the union. You don't have to raise taxes. They can pass a bond and not raise taxes. And the way that works is we pass the bond and we say, okay, instead of this is our tax pool. We have X amount of dollars, every month, every quarter, whatever. We usually would have spent this money on that, but instead of spending it on that, we're going to use this portion of it to pay debt on this bond. So that argument can be made that we're not raising your taxes to pay this bond. That gets me to the point of the trickery that goes on with the taxes, because MISD taxes, county, all of that except for the sales tax comes in our property taxes. Okay, so you can riddle me this, Nino. Why is it you have a property? I mean, I know you probably pay property taxes on your home, so obviously you can see that without them raising, and not only without them raising, with the state actually reducing the top property tax rates a couple years ago, the dollar amount on your property taxes has gone up because they keep evaluating your property and assessing it at a higher and higher value. And the sole reason for that has nothing to do with the market or anything else. It has to do with that's the way that they can increase tax income, tax receipts. Well, I'm sorry, but your property went up another $100,000. There's $3,000 or $300 you got to pay. I mean, that to me, I hear this all the time. Oh, well, you shouldn't worry about the assessment. Well, the assessment's what drives what I pay. The rates mostly stay the same for long periods of time.
What are your thoughts about, I guess, Ranchland Hills and even the MISD bond for the new schools that they want to build, even though we can't even really get teachers? Quick summary on all these. As a common man, how do you look at this situation here?
Honestly,
I'm against it. I'm just being honest. I'm against it. Simple. I'm against it all.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. First, I'm an uninterested observer in this conversation here because I don't live in Midland County anymore.
True.
But I will tell you this, and this is, I don't care where I live. My opinion is, why would I trust any agency or any government with any more of my money in taxes when they've already failed miserably to manage the roads, the infrastructure, all that goes into being a city? Lubbock, Texas, and San Angelo, Texas rebuilt their highways, their loops, and their exchanges and all of that stuff decades ago. I remember when we started building Loop 250 and it was going to be this and this and that. Let me tell you something. Once I'm in San Angelo, I can be anywhere else in San Angelo in 20 minutes. Easy. Same thing in Lubbock. Not in Midland, Texas. Not in Odessa, Texas.
Why, Shane?
They planned so poorly and misspent the money in such a crazy way that this stuff, you can barely make sense of it.
Where's the money going? And not just that, why don't our streets look like Dubai? We're the oil mecca of West Texas, of the United States. Although probably 80-90% of oil comes from here. Why are our streets, we look like a third world country, certain parts of Odessa and even in Midland.
So I would have to be schooled a little bit on where the actual revenue comes from for city streets, because I'm not exactly sure.
Fair enough.
What bucket they get that money out of or whatever you want to call it. I would say if it comes from the general fund, we pay taxes on gasoline, that's all that money is supposed to go to the roads and the infrastructure, besides all the money that the federal government prints to give states for roads and infrastructure. I've been in many places, towns, cities, little one-horse towns where, like, there's no problem with the roads. Part of the problem in Midland definitely is the volume of heavy traffic because of the oil field. That is a contributing factor. True. But by and large, Lamesa Road, Big Spring in town, Midland Drive, Midkiff, Fairgrounds, they fixed up Fairgrounds pretty decent in the last 5-6 years. But these roads so much money has been spent, and it almost feels like for no benefit, you know. And the other thing to me, when you touch on this, I know you're talking about the roads, but I would just say in general. So when we look at what they said they had to raise, that bond they asked for to build these high schools, and I look at that, and I believe it was something like a $300 billion bond, something like that.
I forgot the number. I just know it was outrageous.
Or $3 billion, something like that.
I just know
it might have been $3 billion.
Other cities were doing it for way cheaper.
Well, yeah, but that's my point exactly. Is why is it that if you and I want to build a shop to work on trucks out of, we can build, a pretty nice big shop for about 70% of what it costs the city to build something exactly the same. True, yeah. It's always the inefficiencies and malarkey that goes on with government building anything or creating anything. It's always more expensive. It's always less efficient. That speaks to the point you said a while ago about part of the pitch for the bond was, well, we need to build these schools so teachers will want to come here and this and this and this. I'm gonna tell you right now, where a teacher wants to go work, they want to go to work where they can be safe and where they're going to get paid. I mean,
is that Midland?
Well, you know where I live. I live by a very small school in a one school district.
I like where you live.
So, out there they don't pay the greatest. They do a couple of things to compensate some of the teachers, but Midland pays more than they do, which obviously they should. It costs a lot more for the average person to live in Midland than it does out there. But I would say, my opinion again, right along with firefighters, police officers, and military service members, teachers are they're underpaid. And I understand there's a reason for it. The reason for it is, if you want to get down to it, is you can't just say that's the way things are. So long ago, everybody decided to do this off of the model that came out of the Northeast, where all public sector employees, like teachers or whatever, if you work for the city government, you work 20 years in the school district, you get a retirement. You work 30 years, you can get a little bit more in retirement. Well, every one of them has come to realize, all of ours have come to realize, just like they realized decades ago in New York and all of that, it's kind of a Ponzi scheme. Because at some point, people were living longer than they've ever lived. So people that they thought were going to die when they were 55 or 60 have been in retirement since they're 45 years old, and now they're 85 years old, and we've been paying retirements to them for 40 years.
Okay.
And so you always get to a point where you have more people collecting retirement off your tax money than you have actual people who are teaching for your tax money. And that limits what you can do as far as compensating the teachers you have. And like earlier I said, I'm no lawyer, I'm no economist. I can't tell you the answer to that. I can tell you that that's a bad system. It's a flawed system. I know in the private sector, they got rid of that system by and large long ago. That was the rise of what led to the 401ks and the Roths and all of that, because companies that wanted to last knew that they could not last if they ended up with more people on retirement than they had working. One thing I would add on that, this is just a plug for policy. They need to make it where instead of contributing with a company match to a 401k, we can contribute to our mortgage balance. Deduct this 1,000 from my pay and match this 1,000, knock that off my mortgage.
Shane, as we're winding down the podcast, let's get to, you sent me an email. What do you plan on bringing to the pod, and what are your stances as far as what you bring to the table?
I would say more than anything, the perspective of basically the common man, the average guy, at least for, like I said early on, the part of our population that loves this country, loves their countrymen, wants what's best for it, wants it to be a safe and prosperous country for my children, for my grandchildren, for yours. That and it's really nothing but common sense perspectives in my mind.
Do you think that this country is headed in the wrong direction right now?
I think that's almost, I don't know what you would call that, what kind of question you would call that. I would say that it's absolutely headed in the wrong direction. I think by and large, all sides of the political spectrum know that it's headed in the wrong direction. I believe there's some segments of all sides of the political spectrum that are genuine in wanting to solve problems and fix these issues, address them. I disagree with a lot of proposed solutions and things like that. I think that the base you have to start with is what we were founded on, freedom and liberty, right? So any solution that requires me or requires my daughter to get an abortion to limit the population control, or continues to require us to put 18, 19-year-old kids in jail because they got busted on a street corner smoking a joint, or something of that nature. When you start through that prism of liberty and freedom, and you go from there, there's just the respect for the individual rights. And the most basic individual rights that we have after the Bill of Rights is our rights to our personal property and what we earn. Those are ours. They don't belong to the government. So when you name any of the 10,000 programs that they have that they justify taking our money to give to this cause, that cause, foreign aid, studies where they determine why tadpoles do this in October, all of those things are infringements upon our liberty.
That's a good point. Should the average man be getting involved in his city's own backyard, should I say, as far as the local political scene, like when me and you were doing it, or we'll continue to do at the school board meetings, at these, especially with the local elections? Should the average American get involved?
Well, I will tell them that, yes, they should, and I'll give them a warning. If they don't, they're not going to see more of the same. This gets progressively worse. Progressively worse. Societies are like living organisms. Civilizations are the same way. You are either growing or you're decaying. There's no peak on the mountain where you just stay. You don't get there and stay there.
It's fluid, basically.
Yes, it's growing or it's decaying. And, people that want to continue to sit on the sidelines, they're going to get more of the stuff that they don't like. They're going to get less of the things that they should have. They're going to be able to keep less of their own money, less of their own time. They're going to be able to make fewer of their own decisions. It's you. What do you call it? A slippery slope. There's a reason people said that for decades. This is a slippery slope when you start this, and it's not just slippery; it's muddy and nasty.
And speaking of that, I wanted to have, next time we'll have more current events. I just wanted everybody to get a background of you, and especially highlight West Texas. I think we have a lot to touch on. But speaking of a slippery slope, they said the Hells Angels were going to go to Aurora, Colorado, because illegal aliens, Venezuelans, have taken over certain compounds or apartment complexes in the city. And come to find out from what my research is, it's just a fallacy. It's a lie. Man, we got us a storm out here. What on, mine ain't going off? Is my phone even on? Okay. So they said that the Hells Angels were going to go to Colorado. The Venezuelans have taken over. We've seen footage. Come to find out that was just a lie, right? They're not going. No one's going to save anybody, in my opinion, right? We've got to save ourselves, basically. But your thoughts on Colorado, because they say, many are saying, especially on the Facebook post, that they deserve it because they voted for these policies. There's a sanctuary state. Your thoughts on Colorado and this Venezuelans and even the Hells Angels? Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to pretend like you're talking about California, even though you're talking about Aurora, Colorado. And the reason I'm going to do that is for most of my life, when I was young, California was a Republican state, conservative state, thriving.
Cali was?
Cali, oh yeah.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan was the governor. And,
Okay.
And you know, I mean, they were conservative. You know, they had a thriving economy. You know, it was, you know, all sunshine and rainbows. It was California, right? You look at the politics of California for the past 25, 30 years. You see the state it's in. Their cities are falling apart, rampant crime, rampant homelessness, billion-dollar deficits every year, $6 billion that they don't even know what happened to that they said they used to help with homelessness. All the crazy, not just encouraging transgenderism in their students, but willing to take kids from their parents if the parents don't agree with it. I mean, so I said that to say this. A couple years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we went to California for a week. And my opinion has been based probably the last 15 years on what I've seen on TV of California. The riots, the crime, the gangs, the crazy liberal policies, the high taxes. And so what did that was my opinion of California. Well, we're there for a week, and I've got to tell you, it made me go look at the numbers. Yeah, they've been ruled by Democrats for a long time, super liberal elite Democrats. But there's 45% of the population in California voting against them. 45% of the population is voting for sanity, is voting for fiscal responsibility, conservative values, and the reason that I went and looked at those numbers is because everybody I met and I know I didn't go all over, but I was in a couple of cities and I was there for a week. Everybody I met were nice, polite, respectful, patriotic. Of course, I didn't go into the city center. We were mostly around San Diego and Oceanside, but the people in the restaurants, the people working in the restaurants, the people at the gas stations, working at the gas stations, people at the beach, people at the ball games, by and large, were mostly pleasant people. They weren't the people that we see on the news or whatever. And it made me really sad because I had been in my head judging California as this is crazy land, And so I relate that to I don't want to say they just deserve that. Now, whatever happens, whatever comes to be after all this hassle and stuff in Aurora and whatever's going to happen, stuff like that's going to happen in Denver, I'm sure the politicians, the leaders that allowed it to happen, if they're held accountable, they definitely deserve that. And there's a good segment of the population, I'm sure in Aurora, just like there is all across America, they would like to see nothing more than the destruction of this country, of our Constitution. And those people, they deserve whatever happens. I mean, if they take over every city and every apartment complex in the city, that's the logical result of the policies that they've allowed and implemented.
Wow. How about the people that I've seen them comment? They say that we voted against this. Do we deserve it too? I mean, I kind of feel bad for them too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I brought up the deal with California. There are so many good people. I'm sure there are, and there's the same, probably same amount, 45, 47%. In Colorado, they just want to raise their kids in safe schools and safe neighborhoods, live their lives, go pay off their mortgage, go about their business, and reap all the benefits and blessings of being an American. And unfortunately, when you let a small clique with that much influence and power and that much money behind them control your city, state, and federal government. You know, we're not immune in Texas. I mean, we could laugh about California all day, but look at Austin, look at Houston, look at Dallas.
Shane, let's be honest, look at us.
Yeah.
West Texas is honest. I would say a slippery slope as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, final words for everybody watching. Shane, we're going to wind it down. What do you want to tell the people? Go ahead.
Man, I would just tell you, I'm glad to be here. I hope in the future there's maybe there's some kind of, you know, whether it's delayed by a week or whatnot, if we're doing this weekly. I'm interested in questions. You know, I know a lot of people, myself included. Sometimes I might be scrolling through something, checking out a podcast or even through TikTok, and I'm like, man, you know what? I wonder about this or that, or I wonder if over there they have these same issues I'm seeing here. And, you know, I'd like to see those, but also especially, I know we talked a lot about things that have happened and, you know, myself a little bit, you know, you introducing me and me giving you a little bit of my background. But really what I thrive on, what interests me the most is current events, the news, what's going on. I mean, locally, that's part of the reason why people were in such a hurry. The news cycle is so quick, and there are so many things going on. I mean, just in our city, we may have, you know, issues with the school board, the city council, the mayor's doing this or that, the local media ain't doing none of this, our governor's doing this, but the state senate is operating like this. And then, you know, I mean, we have so much access to so much information, but we're not getting in-depth knowledge. We're not having very many in-depth discussions. And a lot of these issues, to be fully appreciated and understood and addressed, we have to get a deeper knowledge. You know, the information's not enough. It's just not. I mean,
Good point.
I walked in a library one time and I didn't learn anything, and there was tons of information in a library.
Great point. With that, y'all, drop us some questions in the comments, and I agree. You know, next show we'll be going more progressing as far as having more current events on the table. We can have our stuff ready, and we'll speak on that, touch on that. And like I said, this first one was just an introduction as to Shane Manziel, my good buddy, y'all. This guy right here, you know, he stood with me in the darkest time of my, you know, local political career, however you want to call it. And same with him. You know, we stood with a bunch of Patriots. A lot are not even around, and many are. I have the utmost respect for Shane, and we hope that y'all do check out the podcast, because it's going to be a lot of, you know, logical and I would say local of a mindset, and with also us touching on the nationwide political scene, because I think if it's corrupt in the city, right, if it's corrupt in Midland, it's corrupt in every city, right? And if every city's going to build the foundation to the nation. Absolutely. So I think if we... Well, like you said it right, bro. It's like an organism, and if you know, a little bit of leaven at the whole lump, a little bit of poison is going to poison everything. So at least we can bring a dynamic to the table as far as highlighting. I want to really highlight local issues that are corruption, of course, but I think that can also expand to the national scene as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely, plenty. There's so much locally. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'm gonna be candid, y'all. This is the end of my video here, but that's why I brought Shane on here. This guy has vast knowledge on the local issues. You know, he said he was born in Midland from back in the day till now. He's seen a lot in West Texas, and I think it needs to be highlighted. If any time now, especially, and I'm gonna bring more people on here on the show to highlight what's happening in Midland and Odessa, because something crazy is happening here. And I'm warning these people, Shane. I think this country, or I think this city, is changing for the worse. And they think I'm crazy. I call myself a Midland old sorehead, like they call the guys in Stanton. That's what I feel I am. They might think I'm not like popular. I'm not, how you say it, not happy-go-lucky. I'm like a grumpy old citizen here. But I'm warning my people that something is wrong in Midland, Texas, Odessa, the greater Permian. And if we don't start paying attention, we're going to lose this damn city. And if we lose this city, we're going to end up losing this country, which I believe, even biblically, we're not going to keep it. You know, it's going to get... Times are getting rougher, and it's going to get darker and darker as we go. That don't mean we give up. That don't mean we lay down our swords. We have to instill into our children this battle mindset, and we have to fight for
this country. And I don't mean by going and doing something illegal, or whatever. I'm saying as far as the correct way to show our children, the correct way to live, and the correct way to treat each other as citizens in the United States, and more importantly, I would say in our own cities.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything else. If you want to bless your city, start with your own family. And I know that you and I both, not to get long winded, but we that's where we start, and that's actually why we care.
That's a very good point. Our families come first, and from there it broadens out to loving our neighbor. Amen. So with that, y'all, thanks for watching the podcast, and we will be bringing some more content to y'all. God bless.